What is up, guys? Welcome to the Refined Strength podcast. And with me today, I have my very first guest, Miss Sonia Spil, all the way from Washington State. Sonia is one of my very good friends. We have been friends for quite a while, a few years. When did we first meet?
So we've been friends for a whole divorce. That's how long we've been friends.
For a what?
A whole divorce.
For a whole divorce. Yes. Well, two divorces. Both of ours.
2019. I think we met in 2019 because that's when I competed and I met you just before I was like competing for the first time.
Yeah. So that was 2019. We're in 2024 right now in February, and this is Valentine's Day too. So happy Valentine's Day.
I feel like it wasn't that long ago we had a Galentine's Day and we both wore like matching outfits. Do you remember this?
Was that Valentine's Day? Was that
or was it winter?
Was that that was 2021, right?
Oh yeah, we went way before that. I just feel like my best memories with you were that time in our life. We were just
I know. We've had a lot of matching outfits too. Like I have I'm gonna when I create this podcast and I release it, I think I'm gonna put together like a fun, cute, cheesy collage of just like the things of us over the years. But
I'm so for it. That's the only favorite thing though about our story is the mirroring growth that we've had. Like we've had similar things going on in our life where we were in not so great relationships or unhappy with the choice that we made to stay in a relationship. We've literally gone through divorce at the same time together, relationship struggles, starting new businesses, moving job. Like we've done so many different things that kind of at similar times or like right shortly around each other. I feel like it's been good to see that because when it's not me leading, it's you leading in my eyes. You know, like if I'm not the first to do it, then you do something and then I'm like, yes, like fuck yes, energy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're able to we've been able to really inspire each other. And it's one of those things that it's been really cool because it's not like I'm actively like trying to inspire you and you're not like actively like, oh, I hope Rachel's proud of me. Like, I hope she sees this and is like, oh my God, wow. But like, we're both just living our lives and we've been there for each other in different ways. And we've been just like doing our best. And sometimes our best sucks and sometimes it's amazing. And that's where we are today. So that's one of the reasons you inspire me a lot is because you just like you do and you go after the things that you want, even if it's not something that like people might expect from you, or even if people doubt you, you know? So I want people to know you more and like know that stuff about you. So why don't you just like tell me who you are and don't just tell me what you do, because like that's not who you are. Just tell me who you are, what comes to mind.
Yes, I love that you say that because I almost am like, everyone can do any job, you know, like you can be like, I'm a teacher, you know, or like whatever.
Yeah.
But it really matters in who you are. So like, I really am a person who has gone through a lot of adversity in life from a young age. I've gone through lots of self-inflicted adversity, lots of just like environmental adversity. I've gone through health adversities. I've like struggled through just about every damn thing you can struggle through. And I'm so grateful I went through every single one of those things because I feel like I'm just able to give back what I have from overcoming that in whatever aspect, whether it's in friendships or as a mom, which is another challenge in life, in relationships, like adding to a relationship from the things I've gone through divorces and things like that. I'm just able to take that now and see it as a superpower. I've never really been a victim mentality kind of person. I do have empathy. I'm not like a stonewaller, but I've never really seen my story as a victim story. I've always seen it as like, even in the roots of my deepest and darkest addiction, I always was like, one day this shit's going to be, I'm going to be, well, that back then, I'm going to be famous for something. Yeah. I don't know, Steven Clark.
And here you are on a podcast. Like back then, when you were thinking one day, do you think that you were like, did you ever imagine yourself doing the exact things that you've been doing like over the last year, for example, like you host your own podcast, you are a health and wellness coach and functional health coach, you have a daughter, like back then when you were in the depths of your just addiction and adversity and all of those things, did you ever see yourself doing any of these things you're doing now?
So it's such a great question because there's so much of my life now that mirrors some of my addiction. Like I've always been a mama bird, and my friends were like, "You're gonna make a great mom one day," because I just have always been a mom and a gather and a taker care. And like even back in our methiest of days, it would be like before we go rob whatever store tonight, let's like I'll make family dinner and we're gonna do like, and we did Christmas, like I'm talking about in a flop house with no electricity, like making sure that we had like lobster tails for Christmas. Like I've just been that
But they were
person.
stolen lobster tails, so they
Of
tasted
course,
better,
yeah,
right?
EBT traded on EBT, yeah, exactly. So it's like, but still it's like, it's even then too, I was like, I would like read health and wellness magazines, like it was just like bizarre. Or like a lot of times like we would hit like yoga studios because I just loved yoga mats and workout clothes. And like obviously I don't teach or do yoga, but like it's so funny sometimes when I look back and I'm like, wow, this is crazy how like this has been an ongoing passion because I've gone through cycles in addiction and sobriety, and in sobriety, health and wellness has always been my passion. So when I would relapse and go back out, there was a piece of me still holding on to my true identity, or I wouldn't say my identity is in health and wellness, but my a past version of myself, hoping it would one day be a future version of myself too. I think it's the only thing that kept me from completely, I don't want to say hitting rock bottom, because I was homeless, using drugs intravenously, stealing. I ended up with 7 felonies, like lost a pregnancy. Like I've gone through so much in that time that I wouldn't say it wasn't rock bottom, but it was the only thing that held on for like I had a glimpse of what could be in those moments. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like just you seeing yourself like one day I'm gonna be out of this. That's what,
Yeah, and feeling in my heart. So this is like my God story too. Like feeling in my heart, like this is not my end. Like I'm in it right now, but like this is not my end. Granted, I wasn't trying to get out. I just knew in my heart, like it was just this like deep, it was my God feeling. It was that hole of like, there is something else beyond this for my life. I know there is. And it would have been a fucking tragedy if I lost my life. Because I know that there's a purpose for all of that pain, you know?
yeah, I love that. So how long would you say was like the time that you were in that rock bottom era? Like
It's
how long did that last?
Yeah, it's such a great question because I started using drugs intravenously when I was 14. So at a very young age, I grew up in a lovely neighborhood called Kirkland, which is a very nice bougie area, but I just was in the wrong crowd. I now looking back and understanding my genes more, I had a predisposition to addictive behavior, binge eating, eating disorder patterns, just genetically. And then I was a normal weight as a kid, and then I started, but I just had a depression about me for a long time. I couldn't tell you where it came from. Yeah, like a darkness. And then and I was more quiet and more reserved as a kid than like outgoing or like kind of crazy like my sister. Like I was a very good kid but very quiet and meek. And as I got older, I always felt really lonely. We moved about like, I think we moved like 14 times before I was 11. And I'm talking about cross country, changing schools, which really didn't make me feel like I had a community outside of like my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And when I turned 14 and I started junior high, I had never been in like a solid public high school. I had been in like private schools or STEM schools or satellite schools, or homeschooled, smaller versions. And so my mom was a little bit worried that, and I had become overweight, not like overweight, like obese, but I had become overweight because my parents used food a lot as like a lot of like, oh, it's Friday, we eat whatever we want and we binge
Yeah.
eat basically until we're sick. And so I had gained weight and was uncomfortable. And when I started school, I felt even more uncomfortable because I could see drastically how different I was than other people. So my mom didn't want me going in from like a smaller school system to a bigger school, like a huge, like Washington, obviously,
Yeah.
a huge school. So I went to an alternative high school, not
Mhm.
realizing what it really was. My mom was like, this is the one you'll go to. And in Washington, or at least specifically this school, alternative high school, was where everyone went who was like pregnant or drug
Okay.
addictions or gangs or
Yeah.
kicked school district or anything. So it was the worst of the worst. And naturally, like I wanted to fit in, but also like I just connected too with like the drug addicts. I was like, you know, at a young age, pretending to smoke cigarettes like we all do. But I just remember watching Sid and Nancy as a young kid, like 10, 11, 12, thinking like, oh, that's so cool. Kate Moss, heroin chic, that's so
Yeah.
cool. So naturally, when I saw those kids in school,
You
they weren't
identified more that with them. Yeah.
exactly. And at that specific school, it wasn't just kids trying to look cool, it was real kids who were heroin addicts. So
They were really cool. They were the real deal.
they were so dope. Like I'm like, can't wait for Bella to go to school. Yeah.
So
So
that was
I
when you were 14, 15. And then when would you say was the age that you like finally got out of that?
yeah, so I got out because God sat me out, or like the state of Washington said, you're a nuisance and we're taking you out of society. Like you can't fucking behave and act right. For the seventh time now, we're gonna sit you down for 26 months. So I got a 26-month sentence on my seventh felony. So I had been sober in between. So I went to hair school, opened my own salon, would relapse. You know, like I do really well. I have this pattern in my life of doing really well, then going down, really
Yeah.
well, and then going down. And so after years of doing that, I ended up with all these charges. I can't say that I was super excited because I had gotten what we call a DOSA here, which is an alternative to a sentence. You have 26 months, or you can go to treatment for 3 months. You do jail for 6 months, treatment for 3 months, then out in the community, basically on parole for 2 years. And I was like, well, I haven't used mine up yet. I might as well try. When I was in jail, again, like a lot of my story is a God story or a universe story or whatever, divine energy. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't even have to have a name. But I started having that feeling again, like there's something bigger for me. And it was like keeping me up at night. And I remember like having this reoccurring dream of being in this parking lot and this little girl was like running up to me. And I was like, it's so weird. It like I'm not talking like 7, 8, 9, 10 times, like the same dream, same dream. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this stuff a shot, not thinking about the dream.
Mhm.
And but it was like a powerful dream to me. And I was like reading dream books and like,
Yeah.
you know, like stuff like that in treatment. I go to treatment. I'm like, okay, this isn't so bad. I get out. I meet Craig, my daughter's dad. I'm doing the program. This is like fine. And I get pregnant. And so I'm like, okay, now I know my purpose is a little bit bigger. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because it's those moments of like, it wasn't when I was at rock bottom that I changed. I was at rock bottom way before that. And I had
Over
actually
and
like
over again.
over and over again.
Yeah.
It was when I was in jail that the change happened. When I was sober enough to kind of hear that something that hear that voice in my heart and give me hope. And then honestly, just a willingness to try. I'm a real like, fuck it, let's just try it kind of gal. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. Come on, D-ball, let's go. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so what's treatment really? Like, I'm down for whatever, you know? So if it's hard, it doesn't scare me. It never has because I've been through so much hard stuff. So when I got clean, I kind of approached it the same way. Like, I might as well try. And
Yeah.
luckily, I was surrounded by great people. But it's so funny because I remember when Bella was like 3, picking her up at school and she was running across the parking lot. And I just started bawling because it was like this
That
promise.
dream.
Yeah, like if I could get it together, like this is what would occur in my life. So like there's, you know, it's wasn't about rock bottom. For me, it was about the hope of something better, the future version of myself, which I talk about with my clients all the time. What does your future version of yourself even look like? How do you
Yeah.
know where to go if you don't know? I want to lose weight is not enough for me. Like I want to know that you want to feel sexy in a swimsuit on the beach. It's a purple swimsuit. Like let's envision this shit, you
Yeah.
know?
I do the same thing. I think that like people hear that word like what's the future you look like and they hear that and they feel it's like it's very woo woo. It's very just like, well, that's not real. I need numbers. Like I need to know I'm losing 20 pounds. I'm fitting into this size clothing.
Yeah.
But you and I both know like we've both been coaching for years now and when people actually reach the goal that they originally set, like I need to be this weight or I need to do this on this date, they kind of have this feeling of like, huh, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, you know? And it's because they didn't have a really solid why and they don't have a purpose. And
Yeah.
I love that about you because you're someone who just puts your purpose into everything that you do. And that's like, that started from that moment of like not being at rock bottom, because at rock bottom, you don't have a purpose. Your purpose is like the next fix, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's like getting the next bit of money so that you can get the next fix or stealing this so you can get that rush. It's all about the rush. Whereas like, and that's kind of what those superficial goals are like. They're kind of just like a fix. Like I just, or like competing, you know, people decide like, oh, I want to compete and I just competed. Now I'm going to compete again and I'm going to do it again. And they don't really think about like, well, why are you really doing this in the first place? Do you actually like lifting? Do you actually like the lifestyle of being a bodybuilder? And you've just like, for the entire time I've known you through a contest prep, reverse diet, you know, through going through various health phases, going through your divorce, like, yes, you've had some moments of feeling of like, you know, I've even thought, I don't know if she's on the right path, man, you know, but like no matter what, you're still in that like I'm going towards this, like I'm going through this. It might not be right, but I don't know until I go through it and I try it. And I think
Yeah.
that's such an important thing to really like just think about if you have any kind of goal is like if you're not willing to commit to what it is your purpose is driving you to do, then it's not really a strong purpose,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And it's so great that you say that too, because I like clients to really understand. I want to bring it back to the thing you said. Do I want to like be a bodybuilder? Do you even like lifting? Because if you said, and you tell me what your perfect vision looks like. And you were like, I want to weigh all my food forever. And I can't wait to track every macro. And I want to be, you know, flexible, but not really too flexible. Like, and I also have so much time. I just think cardio and the weights for me all the time. And my partner's totally on board.
Yeah.
Great. Then maybe bodybuilding with no off season or bodybuilding with short off season, that might be great for you. But if you tell me that you want more quality time with your partner, he doesn't lift his, he doesn't support or doesn't love that you're in bodybuilding, that you have kids, that you want more flexibility in your life, that you want that the future version of yourself looks like you can maintain weight without tracking macros, being 15% body fat or 14% body fat unenhanced is probably not the true future version of yourself. And working towards an image in your head and not aligned with what your life or your actual, like, what do I want in my life?
Yeah. How
Not
do I
what
want to live every day?
how do I want to live every day? Sometimes we have to be very realistic and have strong vision of how I want to live every day over our actual physique, because they can be close, but they don't always equal each other. And
Yeah.
especially as a bodybuilding coach, you know this, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. And as an athlete too, like I was just talking about this with my boyfriend Austin last night when we were like, it was I think 10 p.m. and we hadn't had our last meal yet. And we're like, the one side of us, like, we know sleep is really important. We know quality time is really important. And we're trying to spend the quality time together and just talk and connect. But then we also have to get this meal in. And it's like, well, what do you do? Like, what's more important? And the answer is there isn't an answer to that. It's not like, yes, the person in front of me that I love, that's the person, that's the thing that's most important. But I'm not going to say like, okay, fuck that last meal. I'm just going to get small every night, right? There has to be give and take, whatever your goal is. And that's what the reality of seeing yourself in the future, of like the future that you want and like how you want to live your life, is knowing that there's going to have to be give and take. There's going to have to be sacrifices. And you also have to cultivate and create a lifestyle that supports the lifestyle that you want to live, or like the goal that you want. And if you can't do that, like if your partner does not want you to compete or does not support anything that you have to do to compete, then it's not that you can't compete and it's not that the partner's wrong. It's that there needs to be some work to blend the two.
Yeah.
Same thing if
And
like someone
compromise.
just want to lose weight.
Yeah. I don't think it's fair to in a relationship. And I definitely did this to my last, my last, I don't know, like one of my marriages, but like my daughter's dad, and we were married for a while too. And we were together for a while. I decided I wanted to be a bodybuilder. And then I was frustrated that he wasn't on board at the same time as me, you know, because I was like, okay, I want to do this, but he didn't necessarily sign up for the level that I go into things because he's competed before. But when I do things, I'm an addict. I do things.
You're addicted to that grind, that lifestyle.
I'm in my fitness pal every night before bed, not talking to him because I'm planning my macros for the next day. Every time we go out, I'm like trying to do all my food. Like it's a lot for a person. And he didn't necessarily sign up for that. And the thing is I always felt like he wasn't supporting me, but I was projecting so much on my shit onto like that relationship that it wasn't really compromised. It wasn't like, hey, support me in this. It's short term. It was like, this is my life. Accept me as I am, And it's like, that's
Yeah.
not necessarily fair when for 8 years it wasn't like that, or 5 years, whatever it was. I think
Well,
keep
and
in
it's
mind
like at the end of the day, like it's a fucking hobby. It's a hobby where you go and get glammed up as an adult and go on a stage
you pay to
in a
go. You pay to
bikini
go. You weren't
and you get a
invited.
plastic trophy. That's
You were
not
not
like,
invited. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're really going to put your marriage, your relationships, your job, like all of these things that people put on the back burner for bodybuilding, you're really going to do that for what it is. And like
Yes.
I'm saying this as I'm a professional bodybuilder, I do plan on competing this year. Like I still love the sport and I mostly coach competitors, but
Absolutely.
you have to be realistic about what it is you're really doing and what you're asking of the people around you. And
Yep.
if you can do that and you can have like a constructive, realistic conversation with the people in your life that it might affect, then you might be surprised. Like they might be really into it and they might be more into it if you just because of the fact that you're talking to them about it and you're including them in the process, not just saying, "Hey, I'm going to compete. I'm going to be a bitch for 12 weeks and then, then we're going to be fine." Because that's not how it goes.
Because the reality is there's also the after competing. And I think you do probably a great job of talking to your clients of like, hey, let's battle plan what this after is going to look like. This is going to be harder than competing in a functional space, which is where I've really changed the direction of my company. It's less. I need you to do less. I need you
Mm-hmm.
to spend more quality time with your family. I need you to say no to more things. I need you to do all of
Track
this
your
stuff.
food less, train less intensely. Yeah.
Take it down a notch. And I think that it's so interesting to combine the two worlds of like, okay, there's a time to push and then there's a time to rest. And when we don't rest, you end up on my caseload. And I love having clients, don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
always like, I
It's
don't
what
want
you
to be like,
do.
you don't want to have to come to me. But you're not coming to me because you want to lose 5 pounds. You're coming to me because you have fertility issues, gut dysfunction, adrenal fatigue, and most likely you're coming to me from another coach. Most of the people I work with have come from other coaches or multiple coaches, or they've been bounced around the medical system for years. And it's not, again, I don't want to be like, you don't want to have to end up with me because obviously I have clients that find me on Instagram and just like my personality want to work with me to like dial in some stuff. But you have to understand that if you do not, it's anything I deal with is a lifestyle disease.
Mm-hmm.
And the lifestyle that drives most of my clients is more is better.
Yeah.
Harder is there. That's where it's at. I'm an athlete. I can go hard. Give it to me. I'll eat dirt. And then not understanding where the off button for that is or
Yeah.
where the balance is. It's either all or nothing. I'm starving or I'm binging. I'm doing cardio or I'm binge drinking with my friends on the weekend. It's there's no gray.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like I know you get a lot of non-competitors too, but I know plenty of people that you've worked with are either current or past competitors who are still recovering from bodybuilding. And again, I'm not trying to down talk bodybuilding. I love bodybuilding, but there's a way to do it that is too extreme and very like addictive and
Yeah.
toxic, honestly. And that's where, you get people coming out of competing, they're retired and they're saying like competing ruined my life. It ruined my health. It ruined my hormones. And
Yes.
it probably did because they didn't do the work. They either didn't do the work before and during their bodybuilding
Say
journey,
that one more time, the before part, because
the
people need to fucking
before.
hear that.
Yeah, because people think people have an eating disorder or disordered habits, or they have some sort of mental health concern or something. They have a hormonal issue. They have, PCOS. They have a thyroid disease. They have any host of issues that you could have going on in your body. And then they're like, bodybuilding will fix it. And it's like, no, it won't. It will
It won't.
actually make
And
it
that was
so much
me.
worse. And if you don't, this is something that's common too, is like clients will go to a coach, say, I'm ready to compete. The coach will be like, bet, me too. Let's get you on stage this year. They push them, they run them into the ground.
I see you
They,
as an IFBB right now in my eyes. You've got pro material. Whatever I have to do to fucking put you on stage and shell out the money is what I'll do.
yeah, exactly. And so they get them on stage And even if they do monitor their post-show phase, that's when you start seeing the problems, is because they were kind of suppressed during prep because they were throwing the kitchen sink at that competitor. And then, the stage is done and your show is over. And then everything starts coming back because all of their negative thought processes, their toxic behaviors, their disordered behaviors, all of that starts to just like come back because there's no show on the horizon. And that's when people feel like they are ruined by bodybuilding. And that's when they go to you because their coach can't figure it out because their coach doesn't know what to do and the person's no longer marketable. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of the industry is.
Yeah, it is. And as a client is no longer marketable, not all coaches, they can get less attention from their coach or less, or the coach is frustrated and doesn't know what to do. So there's shame and guilt in that, and they don't want to refer out. So they backash. This is you're binge eating. You need to figure it out. Like stress less isn't a fucking coaching tool. I'm sorry. That's for any coach out there. Like reduce your stress is unethical to tell your client. Like they're looking for action plans. Yes, you're not a therapist, but like you need to like lower your stress. Like you need to lower their training volume.
How do I lower their stress? Yeah,
exactly.
That's what's important. And like we're saying all this. One thing that I think is really cool, and it's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, is because there are so many more people like you doing the right thing and becoming really well versed and well educated in functional health. And like there's so much more of that now, 2024, than there ever was before. Yeah. And it's getting so much better over time. Like, yeah, you have plenty of functional cases. There's no shortage of clients for you, and there's no shortage of clients for me either. And I'm not a functional health coach, but I'm working on learning more myself. I just got a mentorship with your old mentor, Austin Stout.
And you're seeing it, right? Like you're starting to see it.
Yeah.
You're starting to see it so much more. And you've always been like a growth-minded person.
Yeah.
And sometimes coaches in the space will be like, oh, this person, they should show me fucking people that are hormone specialists now. And everyone's a gut specialist. And it's like, yeah, well, at least we're fucking trying. Yeah. Like at least people are trying to get better. They're not pushing PPIs and clen every day. Like we're getting better. It doesn't matter. It's always good. That's a whole different subject. But it's as an industry as a whole, people are starting to see that they can do better. And that makes me excited for like what the next 5-10 years looks like for bodybuilding, for functional health, fertility.
And like there's always going to be the outliers, right? There's always going to be the coaches that we're talking about that are terrible, that just like run people into the ground. They don't care about functional health, and they'll always be that way, maybe. Yeah. And then there's the middle group that is like maybe you and me, which are really trying hard to be their best and getting better all the time, referring out if it's outside their scope, like I sometimes do, or learning and figuring it out as they go. And then there's the outliers on the other side, which are like way so focused on the functional health thing that they can't even see they can't even get the person back to where they want it to be, or they're finding issues that aren't even there, right? Because I think that's something that happens from time to time too, is someone sees like a little bit of constipation, diarrhea, and they're like, oh, you have SIBO. Let's do a whole ass SIBO protocol.
Yeah. Or like, let's remove a whole food group, or I haven't pulled FODMAPs out of a single gut case in a long time, to be honest with you. And I used to pull FODMAPs out of everybody. And some people need them. Some people need oxalates. Some people need food sensitivity. Like, I'm not saying there's not a need, but it's just, I think it's very easy. I definitely found myself in that space to be like, oh, it's got to be exactly like this. And now what I'm seeing is it doesn't matter if the client isn't compliant, if you can't get them to adhere. So you need to be able to coach functionally, but coach people to adhere as well. And that means flexibility in your belief system. And also science is forever changing. So I used to hold the weight in the word of somebody I looked up to. If this coach said this, that was life for me. Mm-hmm. And now.
Yeah, I used to be that way too.
Yeah. And maybe it's because I've also leveled up and I'm peers with some of these people now. Like on a daily.
You don't have that imposter syndrome as much. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I still do at times, but I have the power of research to back me up. So I'm not taking the word of
experience too.
Experience makes a huge difference.
How long have you been doing the functional health coaching stuff?
God, it's only actually been like about 5 years, which is, I mean, I guess it's a
But
long time.
that's a long time compared to, you know, a lot of people, honestly.
Yes. And again, more intensely the past 3-ish years.
Mhm.
Um, it's definitely taken a turn because obviously you remember when I first started getting into it, I was like super excited about it. And it's just a baby then, you know, and there's so many cases I wish I could go back and work differently on. Like that you're just trying your best. But I was just a
Well,
macro coach in the beginning and I started
yeah.
seeing issues. And that's
You
what
were a
got
macro coach, you did the group exercise thing, like you were an
me.
F45 coach, you were
Yeah.
a bodybuilder, like you did all those
I sold
things.
AdvoCare. That's what
Yeah.
got me into coaching. I sold 24-day challenges, which stopped working. So I went looking for macros, which stopped working. So I went looking for functional. Like I'm always on the pursuit of the next thing. And you know what? I work in OID, which I know that there's a lot of shit online, like overactive immune disorder isn't this, and this is too much, and this is all that. And that's okay. You might think that now. You might think differently in 2 years. I know I did. I know when I
Yeah.
first heard about it, I said, you're absolutely crazy, and I'm not buying into that bullshit
Well,
until
you
I did.
don't think about it and you don't take it seriously until it starts taking you seriously, right? You know,
Yeah. Well,
I've known several people that either you've been connected with or I've just known myself that, you know, knowing what I know from you and how I've learned from you and your content, that I know like, yeah, they're just wait, their time is just running in terms of like before between now and they're just like going to every doctor specialist they can find, and that's great. Maybe it'll work, but for the most part, they're going to keep spinning their wheels, keep getting medicated and over medicated and just shoved just band-aid fixes over and over again.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't think about the root cause. They
Yeah.
refuse to put their ego aside and be like, maybe I'm working too hard. Maybe I'm expecting too much of myself. Maybe I'm letting other people expect too much from me.
You see it all the time when a client goes on vacation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like no digestive issues, no headaches, no this, no that.
The weight
And
drops.
granted, yeah, we could literally go into like conspiracy of chemicals in food, but like we don't need to do that shit. We just know it's stress. Like
Yeah.
it's not like, yes, like there's some truth to like chemical, like food here versus food other places. Like I'm not going to disown that. That's absolute truth. However, you can buy organic non-processed food here and eat it and still have SIBO or chronic gut issues or digestive
Sure.
dysfunction or constipation. I have a client who only poops when she's on vacation. Not now, but she was like, it's the only time I poop daily.
Yeah. It's
And it
normal. It's
doesn't matter
fine.
where on
That's how I've
vacation.
always been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or constipation, vacation constipation. People can't go on vacation because when they go on vacation, their routine's out of place, but they're so tightly wound when their routine's out of place, it fucking dominoes everything else in their life. And that's
Yeah.
another sign. It's like, where are you letting go in your life? What can you let go of?
So what do you feel like is there a recipe that you feel works for you really well in your clients, in working with your clients to finally get their buy-in on your life is too stressful and it's killing you? How do you get someone to really understand that and start really changing?
Yeah. So normally once I've done a rest and reset with them, which is normally where we start everyone. Like, this is what we have to do. Training is 2 days a week. Hypertrophy focused full body each time. We're pushing water up, electrolytes, your calories are coming up, and carbs are coming up. We're going to spike. We do that to spike insulin response inside of the body because a lot of people with can actually have really low insulin. And when you have low insulin, you're going to have the same issues as well because it can't drive glucose into the cell. So I really work on feeding them up lots of carbs, Mediterranean style, wild caught fish, healthy fats, high omegas for like 2 or 3 weeks. And normally for most clients, it's drop, 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 drop. So I can get their buy-in a lot easier when I go like, hey, listen, how is just walking 30 minutes a day and training twice a week going for you? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you were training all this and doing all this, and now you're doing less and you're actually doing breath work twice a day or once a day or once a week, and you're feeling better. Your sex drive is higher. You say your relationship is better. So why the F would we even add anything else back in? Like what are we doing? And so
Yeah.
that was only drive buy-in. However, there's caveats. Sometimes people gain in that phase. And that's for me a red flag that there's even more going on there.
Okay.
Inflammation, cell damage. And in those cases, I really rely on labs. I it's an easy way for me to be like, this is concerning. This is even bigger than we thought, and not a scare tactic by any means, because normally they should drop. But if I have really high inflammation levels and I let them know, like, hey, there's even with gut, let's just say digestion, explaining the fight and flight response to a client, like, hey, you're living in fight and flight and freeze. And when you live in fight and flight and freeze, which freeze gets missed a lot, your body's just going to shut down as a protection mechanism for yourself. And like, we need to love on her and love her and like develop a self-care routine. I know this sounds cheesy as hell, but like giving yourself a fucking hug before you eat a meal, rubbing your tummy, like petting your arms and calming your arms down. I can't tell you how many clients do that. And they're like, I had goosebumps. Like I literally just felt like my soul relaxed. I'm like,
Well,
great.
because I think we as people, just like in today's world, we're so
Yeah.
overstimulated. And we're just so over, like there's so many places where just like anxiety and worry and fear just can like come at you at a moment's notice.
It's
And
marketing too. Like
it's
we're
marketing,
marketing. Yeah.
it's people around us, it's what we grow up with. We grow up with our moms going on every diet that is under the sun because they're terrified of gaining weight. They're terrified of staying that weight. So all they focus on our whole lives is getting smaller. Like never once did my mom try to get bigger when I was growing up because she was already really big.
Or
And
stronger. Like
yeah,
stronger
no,
was
no one
never
ever
a
wanted to
word.
get stronger. And like, now it's really cool seeing girls getting stronger and getting excited about getting strong and, it being just more accepted. But the pendulum swings back and forth all the time. There's people getting stronger and it's really cool. But then there's the people that like, they feel like they can't get stronger or they're not ready to do that because they need to get smaller first. I have so many people that will do a full first consult call with me saying like, well, I need to lose a few pounds and then I want to build muscle with you. So can we do a diet first and then build? But I also want to compete next year. And there's nothing wrong with having that thought because you just don't know what your body is and isn't capable of. And what is going to make you worse from a mental standpoint and what is going to make you stronger and better. And just the thought of like, I need to do this before I'm allowed to do this, especially when it comes to I need to shrink before I can grow. That's just the total opposite of what is best for you and your mind and your personal growth.
It really is a sign of growth too when I see clients that like relinquish that a little bit and they're really
Mhm.
embracing the place that they're at currently in their time. And I think the hard thing for clients is they want to put things on a timeline. Like, okay, I've got
Mhm.
3 months to like heal my diet, heal my hormones, and reverse back up and like have my hormones be good. And it's hard because I'm like, if financially all you have is 3 months, that's great. But like, I almost feel like at this point being like, I might not be the right coach because that's an
Yeah.
unrealistic timeline. Because yes, you can lose weight while we're optimizing hormones. On some cases, remember, guys, I've been doing this a long time. They're not in a deficit. I always like to let people know that too. Because like, yes, you can do that if you're feeding up. You see it too. Cortisol drops, inflammation drops. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily fat loss. So we can do that. I'm less worried about that, but I'm more worried about reversing and keeping the hormones fine because you need to stay with a coach. Most importantly, like you can fucking diet on your own. You can, you've been doing it for years, but you can't bring yourself out of a diet on your own. And
Most people can't.
that is the issue. And that is where you need a coach the most, is
Yeah.
because you're comfortable and your fear of staying the same isn't there. You have nothing driving you because it was just getting there. So there's nothing driving those habits. If you haven't worked on lifestyle long enough, if how are you working on stress?
And if you
And
don't know the why behind the things we do in a reverse diet or a metabolic phase,
yes,
right?
and
Most people they have no idea, why would I raise food at this time? Why would I not raise food at that time? Why would I drop cardio or bring cardio up? It same goes for when someone's in prep or like in a cut phase of any kind, is like a lot of people think like, oh, we just slash cardio calories in half and go straight to high cardio right off the bat. And and that's what works. And then, as soon as I stall out, then, we drop weight again. Sometimes it's not that simple. And we need to understand the entire picture That's why I take so much data when I have people check in. And I know you do too. You take way like double the amount of what I take. Like it's insane. But it's good because it's like that's what you need in order to
Yeah.
do your job, but also show them how important all of this stuff is and how important them learning about it is. And I think that's another thing that's like a hidden feature of all the data that we take is not only does it help us do our jobs, but it allows clients to self-discover and it allows them to learn their body more. And that is like my number one like value of like when people coach with me and why I'm actually happy when people end up leaving after a few years because they feel like they're finally ready to do this on their own because they've
Yes.
learned so much about their bodies through the data that we collect and
I
through
can't.
asking questions to me
Yeah.
when I make changes or when I don't make changes. Because if you just follow a plan, I'm like, I'm gonna eat dirt if you tell me to eat dirt, like I'll jump as high as you want me to jump. That's cool. But after you're done with me, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't have any
Exactly.
education or awareness of like what how your body responds to anything because you never paid attention.
Even awareness around cycle. Like I had a client the other day and she's like, I'm just feeling so bloated. I was so happy because I thought this feels like I'm ovulating and looked at my app and I was ovulating. And I was
Oh,
like, yes, the first thing now this is a chronic gut case. The first thing she didn't think is I have SIBO or I need to up my killers or I'm going through the she just thought, oh, I'm feeling really gassy and bloated. I must be ovulating. And she was. She was like, I was so happy. Like I felt like I had awareness and control over it because it gave me peace knowing it would pass.
that's awesome. And that's what we
Like,
want. That's like that's a client that's like what I see from those types of people too is they can leave and not fall apart, which is awesome. I love that. I don't want someone to fall apart when they don't have me anymore. Maybe they don't have me because of finances or just like a break for school or something like that. But then sometimes those people come back and they're like, all right, I did all of this. Sorry, my dog. I did all of this while you were gone or while I was gone. I tracked all my data too. I had a girl come back to me after like a year away and she kept tracking all of her data. So then she came back to me and she had all of this stuff and we were able to like pick it right back up and
yeah,
like work on a new goal for her. And that was really cool.
I do want to talk on data. Just I don't know how much time you have set aside because I think this is like really important too, is data can be a tool, but data can paralyze you. You can have analysis paralysis. Too much information as a coach can be overwhelming. Too much information, like on labs or specific, like what
Yes,
direction do I go? They've got low this and low that, and here, and like they don't need seven. You can't add 17 different protocols. Here's a gut protocol and a hormone protocol, and it can paralyze you, right?
for sure.
Data, it can be a tool, but if you are somebody who's prone to obsessive compulsive behavior or repetitive behavior, or you feel a stress if you aren't tracking, it can also be a downfall.
Yeah.
So like steps in tracked 3 times a week in a maintenance period, like great awareness around steps tracked every day when you're in a maintenance period and not working with a coach, like it can give people, if I don't hit, it's not all people, it can give some people like, oh my god, if I don't do this then I'm frustrated because I didn't get my 10K steps in or I didn't get 8K because I had all these meetings.
That's
That
when I see like the need to, all right, let's step back. Let's hide these columns and not focus on those anymore. Or let's just give me like these three data points and that's it. You
yeah,
know?
like
And or maybe like instead of the data points, give me a summary. Like, yeah,
yeah,
it's more for me to read, but like give me just like kind of a brain dump of how you're feeling and how the week went.
yeah,
And, because with our experience, like we can see a lot and we can see a lot through even small data points. Like, is more data helpful? For sure. But sometimes just seeing that more data is going the other direction for the person is helpful as well and can tell us a different type of story. And it also just makes us
exactly.
better coaches because we can flex our intuition more.
Yes, exactly. And knowing your client is key here too, like understanding if they're didn't write their macros, you can trust that they've still followed their macro, or like, just
Mhm.
small nuances like that. But having flexibility with people has been, I think, a bigger game changer for my business. I think more coaching the people versus the protocol is like my biggest growth in the past year. And I have the hardest cases I've ever had in this year because I work on both my cases and then I work on obviously the head coach of our company. So Vince's Pitstick's pretty big name in the coach manager on his cases as well. So I oversee half of all of his cases, or I run half of his cases and he oversees them. So I see like the worst of the worst. So this is like a heavy functional, and it's game changer because it doesn't feel as hard because I'm coaching the actual human being on like, how does this land with you when I tell you you have these things, or how does this land with you when you see your protocol? And like, honestly, just that question, how does this land? Like, how are you feeling when you look at your protocol that I just delivered? That is so big for me to understand how this person's mindset is preparing to go into this situation that we're going into, because we're going into it together. And I'm not being a good leader if I'm just running ahead of them. I really need to be a good leader by walking side by side with them. Like, hey, we're in this together. Like, understanding that they know that I'm walking 2 steps ahead of you. I'm going to pull you from behind. Like, I'm going to lead the way, but like, I'm not running ahead of you and expecting you to run up to me. I'm going to match you where you're at.
Yeah. So what do you talking about leadership? I really like hearing that. What do you see? Like, how do you define good leadership?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know if I have a strong definition, but I do know that I really look to myself if a client is only as good as my leadership. The outcome is only as good as my leadership. Now, there's going to be caveats of people that are just, I don't even have to make a list. Anyone who knows. We all have people in our lives or that we've worked with where you're like, this
They
ain't a
just don't
leadership.
try. That's
They
what
just
we're
don't
talking
try.
about. Yeah.
And even
No matter
then,
how good of a leader you are, they're just not trying. And they have to figure themselves out.
but even then, a good leader knows when to fire, knows when to refer out, knows when to let go, because it will affect you. I talk about this in the mentorship class that I teach. If you hold on to a client that is weighing you down, you are literally taking away from the other clients on your roster.
Yeah.
Showing up frustrated, and you are attracting more of that client. So at the same time, being a good leader is you are the outcome of your team. It's also, you need to know when to train and when to fire, because some clients need additional handholding and resources, and that's a leadership's job. But sometimes they don't even grab those resources. We have an eating disorder. I hate using the word eating disorder, but a program, like a community that we have for people who have eating disorder behavior or eating disorder tendencies or anxiety around gaining weight or just emotional addiction of like the stress of life. And I'll give that resource. Maybe that they don't take that resource. I'll give them a self-care guidebook. They don't take that resource. Like, okay, maybe this I need to now. So I've trained. If I can't train in pain awareness, I need to fire.
Yeah.
And that's okay as a leader, because again, you're giving back to your team when you get rid of somebody who doesn't add value to your team.
Well, and you're also knowing your worth. And I think that's something like we don't always want to talk about as, especially if we're not where we want to be in our life as a coach or leader, is like not knowing our worth enough. And I know that for me, when I first started my like full-time coaching, which was, I've been coaching like, I did side hustle style for 2 or 3 years. And then I went full-time into coaching under my old company. And that was in 2021, like early 2021 in January. I was terrified of losing clients or having a client not want to work with me because I was too harsh with them. Even though like I pride myself at the same time, I pride myself, and I always have, on being really clear and to the point and honest with people and not wanting to have someone sign up with me for the wrong reasons. But I had this fear of like, well, if I say this, I'll be pushing them away. And sometimes what I've realized over the course of the last 3-4 years since then is like, it's okay to push some people away, because if what you say when you really are like acting from a place of strong ethics and leadership and wanting to help the person not just hit their goal and win, but do it healthily, like in a health focused way, if you are doing that and they are turned off by that, then that's not the kind of person you want to work with. And I think any coach listening to this, or any client who's been told something that they didn't really want to hear by a coach or someone on Instagram or something like that, that made them feel kind of like triggered almost, like, ooh, like, what is she talking about? Like, they kind of have that feeling of they might be talking about me, but they're not, because I couldn't possibly be that way. That's their ego. So if that's you and you've ever felt that way, like, think about it. There's probably a reason you feel that way. And that coach, like when I say that kind of thing to someone and tell them, like, hey, you're not ready for this, or maybe we're not the best fit because you're not wanting to do what I'm saying you should do, then if they don't work with me, then great. Hopefully they'll figure it out and they'll work with someone they fit better with. But a lot of the time when I do that, I get people that come back to me like a few months later and they're going to say, like, you were right. Like, I wish I had listened to you before, because you're the only one that told me the truth.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of like becoming a true leader, and not just someone doing the thing and just like trying to get by. Is
Yeah.
like, you can be a leader no matter who you are. No matter if you have a boss, if you're your own boss, like, you can lead by example. And I think you do a really good job of that by doing just what I said, is like always telling people the truth and
Yeah.
knowing your worth.
It definitely took, you and I have talked about this conversation before of like I do fall into the habit of people pleasing though. So for me, this is a challenge. And you and I have discussed this because you have this quality, you instill this quality and you have for a very long time. And you have had that. You just have, it's that, and I've always but I struggle because I try to lead and then I fall on people pleasing and then I get burnt out with being a leader. And I
Yeah.
can't afford to get burnt out anymore because I've created something really important to me in my life with my
You have a lot of
relationship.
people that are depending on you, not
Yeah,
just
not
your
just my,
family, but your
exactly.
clients
It's
and the
both.
people you mentor, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I have a lot of different aspects and areas where people expect me to show up, and that ability to be like, I'm not going to people please, or I'm not going to like, I'm going to set a boundary here, or I'm going to do X, Y, Z, sets the like people treat you how you would want them to treat you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the biggest things for me that's really paid off is like, you're right, in the intake process or even in the coaching process, just reiterating like, maybe there is a better coaching experience, or there's a different coaching experience for you that might fit more in line with what you want. Because I'm going to be honest, I'm going to go for what I see that you need. And what I'm hearing for you is you want somebody who's going to give you what you want.
Mm-hmm. And
And that
sometimes
happens.
that statement and that honesty is enough to get them to like get their ass in line. And it's enough to make them really change their lives, which is what they wanted, right?
Yes.
And they needed to hear that. They needed to hear that clarity. And even though it was, tough love, it's still love. And
Yes.
it's coming from a place of love, because we love helping people and we love seeing people thrive and succeed
Yeah.
and win. And no, I don't want to see you lose. I hate to see you go, but if you got to go because you're not willing to change, then I have to be able to give that love to the people that want it.
And sometimes that honesty builds trust and rapport with a
Mhm.
client. So for example, I'm going to use fertility as an example here. I'll have a client and I will say, hey, listen, your chances of getting pregnant after us working together are higher. First, you will also, your positive ovulation, that is not the time for you to try and get pregnant. And I know that's really hard to hear because I know that you're counting on this. And there's always God. So God trumps science. So like on this, like, yes, you could get pregnant and have this miracle baby, but when you are newly fertile, you are at the highest risk of miscarriage. When you are just beginning to be fertile and ovulate, it does not mean you're healthy enough to carry a pregnancy. And there
Interesting.
are people that are very heavy that perfect ovulation, perfect hormones that can't carry to full term because of genetic or micronutrient deficiencies in their genes.
Wow.
And so I always tell them like, it's so important that you use the fertility awareness method just to save yourself the heartbreak
Mm.
of having to go through a miscarriage within the first 3 months. Because it sets us back a little bit, but it's never a setback. In their mind, I have clients that are like, I still want to try during that time. And I tell them, that's okay. I'm never going to tell you, do not try. I just want to be very honest with what I see and the experience that can happen.
Yeah.
Because I've been through that. And I know it's a lot easier when you don't have a life inside of you to say you don't mind if you lose it versus the little bit of, you do always think in that situation, well,
Maybe I'm the exception.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And there are exceptions. I just
for
want to say
sure.
there are exceptions. I'm an exception. I can't believe I even got pregnant when I did. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. But what happens is sometimes and it's a high number. I don't want to say always, but sometimes they do. And it's probably closer to 95% of the time when we first start working together, if they're not ready and we have this conversation and they go through it. We go through it together. There's never an I told you so. It's always God and grace in those situations because I've lived it. And I know I want shiny objects. I'm like, okay, more steroids, different coach, different, like whatever. So I get it. I truly do.
Yeah.
But when they come back and we have this conversation, every single thing I say is Bible to them. Cool. Because they know I'm only telling you this because I'm really looking out for your best interest. They know what I'm saying is fact. And I have like their absolute buy-in with things. Do they ask questions? Yes. I love question askers. Like, are they bought in 100%? And they understand like, okay, my coach has got the best interest. And you see probably like fat loss phase is in the right time. You need to work up. You need to work up. Okay, fine. Let's test this. Let's waste, in a sense, I don't say that. Let's waste 6 weeks trying to lose weight. And guess what? 6 weeks has gone back, 2 coaching payments have gone through, and they haven't lost a single pound. And now you have to start the reverse. And that's hard.
Yeah, that's hard. That's the worst. I honestly that test, giving that people that test, I haven't had to do that in a long time because I think I've gotten better at the buy-in initially thing.
Yeah.
Thank God. But like I've had to do that test and it is heartbreaking, even if it's something as silly as just like fat loss and like trying to lose a little weight.
For me, it's defeating for them. It doesn't breed excitement.
And there's also embarrassment, you know? There's the embarrassment that happens when you were like, no, I'm gonna be the exception to the rule. I'm gonna prove you wrong. But I still want you to help me, but I want you to help me do this thing that I want to do that you don't want me to do. And it's like, okay, let's try it. But if after this time it doesn't work, does it make sense for you to try it my way?
Yeah.
The way that I'm saying is going to work better. It's going to take a long time and you're going to feel embarrassed, and that embarrassment can be so bad sometimes that they end up leaving or ghosting. That has happened as well.
Ghosting. Yes.
But at the end of the day, everything I believe is just a big learning experience. And sometimes it's a hard learning experience and the client goes or whatever, or
client. Yeah, exactly. Every client that leaves should be a learning experience, whether it's on terms or bad terms. Like, this is what I did well, this is what I could have done better.
Yeah. Or even a client that, fails while with you and you have to pick things back up, or if they don't quite get to their goal and you have to keep them not just motivated, but like keep them engaged in order to continue on, even if they didn't reach their goal. I had a client who had been in a long fat loss phase, lifestyle client, very long and sustained phase. And she had a lot going on during that phase. She had to move unexpectedly. She's an international client too. So she had to, like, so many things, so many moving parts were happening that she didn't expect while in this fat loss phase. And we got to a certain point where, like, for 6 or so weeks, we weren't seeing any progress. And we had pushed a little bit, but I didn't want to push her too hard. And finally, I gave her the option. I was like, look, we totally could push for a little longer and it's gonna suck, but you can do that and I'll walk you through it safely. Or you can decide it's time to reverse diet, even though we're 5 pounds off from your original goal, or our original goal. And it's not giving up. When you don't reach a goal, you are the one choosing to say, I failed, I'm giving up. But why not instead saying, like, a lot of time has passed and I'm now a different version of myself. And this version of myself it doesn't make as much sense for me to hit this specific goal that 6 months ago I set for myself.
Yeah.
So think about it that way, going back to what we were talking about, like, how do you see yourself? If you've reached a lot of other pieces of the goal by a certain point, but you didn't hit that last 5 pounds, then is it really a loss?
It's a change. Yeah. And
it's a change. It's a shift. It's a pivot. You move into a different part of who you are and what you're going to do next. And now, like, hey, guess what? If you choose to reverse diet instead of keep pushing, you get more food. That's going to make you happy. Smile.
Yeah. It's so funny too how those things change, and the true growth comes when you can look back and smile. It's like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I'm gonna date a boy that like has a tattoo and wears a backwards hat and like that's like, you know what I'm gonna, I mean,
Yeah.
that's not what I got, but like it's you're like, oh, this is like the most important. And then later you're like, I want somebody who makes me smile and I know has my back and won't talk
Yeah.
bad about me or not. Like things change as you develop and your goals will constantly change with those two. So
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
yeah.
So what is so last question. What advice would you tell yourself 10 years ago? And do you think you would have taken it knowing you?
10 years ago, um,
Where were you 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I was just getting clean and sober. So I think if I would have given myself any advice, it would have just been to focus more on fun, you know? I think when I got clean, I focused so much on like being so regimented on different things. It played into my addiction. It became like the next thing. I would become obsessive with everything that I did. And I think I lacked a lot of fun. And I think now I had to learn the hard way of being burnt out and like having relationships fail and giving up other stuff that like I wish I would have made more time for things that made me fun, more community, more friends, more laughing instead of like having to chase the goal of like of course getting sober. I was like I have to have like this life that I've never had before and I'm gonna
Hmm.
in the first year I have to like have a house and job and a bank account and a baby and like I have to have all these things to like be successful and I wish I would have just taken everything slower. I love my daughter. I would have never changed anything, but just the grace I gave myself to like live a little out of the need for like having to look a certain way on paper.
Mm, yeah. And
Yeah.
like, I think too, for me, similar to that is like just, yeah, you can set goals and like have a vision of yourself that you want to see, but know that that can change and it's okay if it changes. You didn't fail if you don't have the house. I had a really silly goal that I wanted to like, I I really wanted to buy a house before this age. And then I also, at a certain point, set a goal like, I really want to get breast implants. But like, I know that that's like a silly surface level thing. So I'm going to wait until I buy a house and then I'm going to get boobs. And that was just such a silly thing that I had in my head that I never told anybody about. But I was like, that's a responsible thing to do and that would make more sense. But life changed a lot and I ended up getting boobs first. And then I got a house, but I still did them both before I turned 30. So,
Yeah.
you know,
It's funny too, like you're like, one of the biggest changes you said, would you have listened to yourself? And I wouldn't
mhm.
have because I don't like, I'm a
You've been
little
like,
bit
no.
stubborn. I'm sure that my boyfriend is listening in the background thinking, no way, she's not stubborn at all. Like I get real hell. I have hellbent tattooed. I have had it tattooed since I was like 15. I get real hellbent on something. But I think as I've gotten older, I know I'm all into a process. I'm going to do it and I'm going to go for it. But if I fail, I take it as a lesson versus a failure.
Hmm.
It's like
And
okay,
that's a really, like, that's hell bent, but in a really productive and constructive way.
yeah, like I'm going to give it my all, but like, hey, this might not work out. And if it doesn't, like, we'll laugh about it and it'll be like, okay, that obviously won't be something I'm doing again. Like, you know,
Yeah. And I'm going to give advice to other people trying to do
yeah.
it and like tell them not to do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. So thanks for
Yeah.
having me too. I just like love rapping about this kind of stuff because I think
I
it's
know.
just honestly helpful to just be real in the process of coaching and the mindset stuff that comes along with coaching and clients as well, right? Because it doesn't matter if either one of us are your coaches, you can still take this. You can't, you also are responsible for your outcome. So
Hmm.
hopefully anyone listening, coach or client, has taken this and thought, great, this is something I can apply to either my coaching business or my coaching
Hmm.
process or my life, relationships, whatever it
Yeah.
is that you're looking for growth
Yeah,
in.
exactly. That's one thing that I am excited for with this podcast is just bringing more people together and amplifying more voices like yours, because what you have to say is so important. And I have watched you grow that so much since you first started all of this. I remember back in, I don't know, like 2019 when you were first getting into more functional health after your prep. And, you definitely had a lot of naysayers. You had people like, oh, there's Sonia talking about the mitochondria again. And it's like, don't get her started. And it's like, they doubted you, and that's okay. Like, it was new for you then, but you were so passionate and you were so hell-bent on it. And
Yes.
now I have the opportunity to like give that to more people. And I know, you have your own podcast, you have your own coaching business, you have your amazing family, your social media, your community, and your tribe. And I just think that like the more we can do stuff like this and collaborate with people that are like-minded but different is like the better that we can make the industry.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on, and we'll have you on again soon.